Okay, everybody, I'd like to welcome you all to the old barn. I hope you've enjoyed everything so far. Just a very quick announcement for all the ladies in the house. The toilets are through by the patio doors there. There's a toilet through there, and there's a second one if you go round to the front entrance where the glass link is. There, you go through there to the right, go straight to the door, and there's another loo on the left. All right, the portaloos are for the gents. Okay, right.
Or the shed.
Okay, right. Okay. Well, the internet, as you know, is really great for ideas and inspiration. So I found a great template for my speech. So here goes. Okay. The first bit is welcome the guests, particularly any guests of significant age, the very old and the very young. So, welcome very old and welcome very young. Okay. Thank you to everyone for coming today, especially those who have travelled from far and wide. Very much appreciated it. And for those people that couldn't make it today, our thoughts are with you, and we hope that you'll like the photographs and the video that's been taken. Next bit on the template is the groom, Harry. So it says, although my primary purpose is to talk about my daughter, I don't make the mistake of forgetting the mention of your son-in-law. So love or loathe him, actually 3/4 of the guests are there for him. Only joking. Alright, so welcome Harry into our family. I had a phone call from Harry in the autumn of 2013, and it started off with the pleasantries, and then it started to drag on. I knew why he was phoning me, and it took him a while to spit it out. I was very touched when he asked me if he could marry Emily. So welcome to our family, Harry, and good luck with that one. I was with Emily at a school open evening when I first saw Harry. Emily was smitten with Harry, 14 3/4 at the time. Was impressively playing the drums. I can't remember how many times she asked me what I thought about him. Family is the next bit on the template. Welcome the in-laws. This is not the time to offend the daughter-in-laws, okay, the daughter's in-laws. Well, there's plenty of time to do that. No, only joking. I want everyone to know how happy I am for both of them, and I welcome Harry to our family again. I am so pleased that Emily has married into a loving family, so thank you to V and Bob for their support and kindness to Emily and welcoming them into their lives. Thank you to V. I'm very grateful for her sorting out the food for this evening. If it was left to me, it would be the Jacobs, of course. Those people in my family know that whenever I was caught short with people coming, out came the Jacobs. Okay. Lost my speech. Thank you. And a piece of truth. Yeah. Right. The next bit on the template is keep it short. Your speech is quite likely to be the first and the first of few, so don't let it drag on too much. So moving on. Next bit is to minimise the gush and avoid the job application speech, so I had better move on now to my daughter. Emily, my beautiful Mediterranean daughter, Italian, Roma Gypsy, who knows? Or the postman's. She's had all this beautiful, almost black hair since she was born. I honestly thought there'd been a mix-up in the hospital. Emily found her thumb when she was 2 weeks old. She had her first bad cold at 3 weeks old. She had her first fight with Amy when she was 2 years old. And the fights continued with Tom and then Molly, and the pinches were the worst. Emily has always been a hard worker since she was 14. She has frozen taking money at the door of antique fairs. She's worked in the pub at the White Lion at Broad Windsor, and she's waitressed at Mapperton House. But most of all, she's worked hard at school, which led her to becoming a biomedical scientist and went on to work for Leukemia Busters. And I'm very pleased to see you here today, David and Bea. I did remember. Being a hands-on kind of girl, she then became a staff nurse, working at Southampton General and now at the hospice. And I applaud her and admire her for the work that she does. I still to this day don't know how she actually copes with the shift work, as I know that she needs and loves her sleep. Next bit on the template are the thank yous. I'm very proud of Tom for walking Emily down the aisle. So well done, son.
Cheers, Mum.
Your speech is next, okay? Thank you to Guy for all his hard work, wiring, plumbing, shifting, painting. Well done, thank you to Amy and Jemima for organising the hen do. It was really, really enjoyable. Fabulous. Thank you to the best man, the ushers, the big ones, and particularly the littlest one. The bridesmaids look absolutely gorgeous, and I'm really grateful for Emily for having such good-looking friends and, of course, sisters and cousins. I'd like to give my thanks to Badir and his team for the wonderful meals. Let's hear a clap for Badir. I really enjoyed it, so thank you to him. Thank you also to Melissa, Karen and Paul for helping with the cars and generally helping for us to get ready. And thanks to Dave for his camper van. Thank you very much. Finally, on the template is the toast. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening. Please raise your glasses to my beautiful daughter and my handsome Harry. Cheers.
Cheers, everyone. Yeah, Charles. Go on, ching at the table. Get in there.
Now then.
27 pages. Page 1.
So James has got 58 minutes, I think, on the sweepstakes. So let's see how long I can drag this out. You going to sit down?
So stop me first.
Okay. Thank you, Shirley, for those kind words. Ladies and gentlemen, most grooms stand up and say something along the lines of, I'll make this as short as I can. But me being me, I'm going to say the opposite. And I know you'd all be disappointed if I said otherwise, especially you, Emily. This speech will be slightly longer than the typical groom speech for the following 4 reasons. Number 1, I like making speeches, and this is one of the few times I'm actually allowed to do one. Number 2, I'm my father's son, so an excruciating speech is part of the course. Number 3, Emily and me have been together for just under 6 years now, and this has given me plenty of material to call on. And number 4, the longer I talk for, the less time my best man has to ridicule me in front of my friends and family.
We'll see about that.
Don't worry, although my speech is slightly elongated, we won't be hearing from 3 best men, the bride, the maid of honour, or any of that Jordan and Branwen. Moreover, I'll be limiting the number of toasts to one at the end, so feel free to take a healthy gulp of the good stuff at the right time, Charlie. Now, I've seen lots of grooms ad-lib at this point in proceedings, and I wish I could do that, but I can't, so I'll be using this carefully typed speech that I have here. Okay, let's start with the thank yous, and then we'll get on to the juicy stuff. Now, this section I would like to keep like my new mother-in-law, short and sweet. Yeah, there's plenty more of that. I would firstly like to thank both Mum and Shirley for their help with the preparations. In all honesty, we couldn't have picked a worse time for the wedding. That's apart from the traffic that you all had coming down. Mum was preparing for 2 other weddings, her godson and my brother James and Annabelle's wedding. Congratulations to the other Mr. and Mrs Driscoll in the room. And Shirley was busy undergoing a major renovation of the old barn. So thank you both for finding the time to dedicate to our special day, and thanks especially to Grandad Guy for working, as he said every time we came round, 10 to 14 hour days, getting the house ready in time. I think we can all agree he's done a great job, so thank you. I would also like to thank my ushers, including my best man James, who you'll have the pleasure of hearing later on, and especially my dad for being a real sport and agreeing to wear Converse trainers in a skinny fit suit. In fact, while I'm here, I'd like to thank all the guys who came on my stag. So, we got Rich for being the only friend who ever phones me for a chat, apart from James when he's in the country. James for never being in the country and making me look bad with his latest technology purchases. Guy for the above as well and making Emily jealous with his brand new kitchen. Joe for drinking me under the table every time he comes round. Charlie for his knowledge of local beers, brewing in general. There's 4 sides of it. Liam for inviting me to gigs, teaching me about music. Robbie for his endless questions. Luke for fixing my car for free, no matter what the problem is. Greg for knowing more about science and being more well-read than me. Jamie for letting me beat him in the park run every week and for proofreading my impending book on life. Tom Robinson for helping me discover the gym and enabling me to beat Jamie. Jordan for texting me with awful suggestions of programmes I might like to watch on Channel 5. Thanks for that, mate. Tom Gibbs for eating all the sausages and leaving my house in a mess every time he comes round. Andy for offering me dodgy electrical goods, including the iPod dock that we had in the chapel.
Worked wonders.
Yeah, well, yeah. Dave for letting me use his boss swimming pool and tennis court. Thanks for that, Dave. And Mr. Garrett for organising my stag and being my oldest friend. Thank you. Quick mention should also go to Ross for taking Amy away from me and Emily. In fact, we weren't sure whether to invite Ross on the day, as him and Amy have not been going out for long, but I've noticed a leak in our conservatory, mate, so you know you did the right thing. Okay, I think that's everyone. Okay, the bridesmaids, alright. What about the bridesmaids? Well, I know them all quite well, so they're not going to get away with it. There's Amy, for making sure me and Emily always have company. Anytime, any day. Leah, from correcting me when I'm wrong. Doesn't happen very often, though. Molly, for phoning me up every time she can't do simple tasks, like putting petrol in her car. Jemima, for sending me dirty text messages, pretending to be Emily. Yes, do you remember that, Jemima? Yeah. And Charlotte, for being the 4th sister, as if 3 weren't enough. Joking aside, yes, this is all said in jest, Helen Frost. I think you are all fantastic and definitely the prettiest group of bridesmaids I've ever seen. As well as the wedding party, I would also like to thank everyone else for coming. My family and friends, Emily's family and friends. We've really enjoyed we've really enjoyed welcoming you here. Thank you very much. It's also worth mentioning the caterer Badir, who's produced some wonderful food for us today. I didn't think I'd cry at the wedding, but then I received his final bill. Before we move on, I would like to be serious for a moment and take a minute to pause and think of those we've lost recently and those who cannot be with us today. We all know who they are, we miss them, and we hope they're safe wherever they are. Now that's the thank yous. What about my wonderful bride? People often say that their chosen partner is their perfect man or woman, and in the case of Emily, this is actually true. Woman, of course. I've always had a crush on Kate Beckinsale, and Emily's pretty much the closest I can get to her. No, the truth is, she's always been in my top 3 at school, and she probably still gets in now. No, being serious for a minute, I truly think Emily is the most beautiful girl I've ever met, and today she looks absolutely amazing. So, to use Emily's favourite saying, to cut a long story short, I first met Emily in 1996, our first year in secondary school. We were friends throughout school, although we weren't in the same form. I was fortunate enough to be in Wadden House, what I consider to be the Gryffindor of Beaminster School. High achievers, famous Harrys, you know. I can see Vicky and Sarah at the back, yeah. Whereas Emily was in Pilsden, more the equivalent of Ravenclaw. Average achievers, forgettable faces, no offence Charlie. We did, however, have the same friendship group, and we were fortunate to be included in the Cool Kids school photo at the end of year 11. For anyone who is not in that photo, what can I say? We obviously weren't cool enough. But it was in sixth form that we really became close. By then, Emily had grown above shoulder height and was beginning to get noticed as a really pretty girl, not just by me. Of course, at this time, as I alluded to in my speech at Rich's wedding, I wasn't particularly pretty. More a cross between Goofy and Roger Rabbit, still wearing braces and only just discovering hair gel. So it wasn't to be, and the best I got was a dance at Lucy Lane's party, where in all fairness to Emily, she couldn't escape because she had a broken foot and she was on crutches. Yes, Tom, the clamp was in operation. Although we didn't go out at school, we were close, and I remember sitting next to Emily on the bus on the way back from ice skating in Bristol. We were only 16 at the time, but we both agreed if we were single at 30, we would get married. True story, and here we are. Thank you. Of course, it's no secret that I fancied Emily at school, and when we were 17, I plucked up the courage to ask her out. A lot of people don't know this, but I took Emily out on our first date all the way back in 2002. I remember it well. It was a Bridport fireworks display, and I bought my first pair of jeans to commemorate the occasion. Now, it must have gone well, because she agreed to a second date 6 years later, 2008. Yes, that's right. The length of time it took to get a second date is almost as long as it takes Grandad Guy to tile the bathroom. Come to think of it, that probably coincided with me buying my second pair of jeans, but that's not the point. Now, finding a moment where Emily was single was difficult. As we all know, the Gibbs sisters don't stay single for long. Thanks to Emily, Amy and Molly, Shirley has probably seen more boys walk through her front door than she's cooked hot dinners. Now, whether that tells us about how many boyfriends the Gibbs sisters have had, or how many dinners Shirley has cooked, I wouldn't like to say. But, by pure chance, Emily was single on that fateful night in 2008, and agreed to meet me in Bridport. We didn't mention bringing anyone else, yet I compelled to bring my trusty steed, Mr. Garrett, and she brought that ever-so faithful companion, Amy. That date, if you can call it that, was the first indication I got of the fact that, and Melissa, Dave and Ross, you can all vouch for this I'm sure, when you date a Gibbs, you don't just date one Gibbs. There's Amy, Molly, Tom, and now Phoebe the cat, not to mention Andrew and Charlotte. They all come as part of a package, but a better package you could not find anywhere, and they've made me feel part of the family from day one. Emily has been a part of my life now since that August bank holiday in 2008. It's been a brilliant 6 years. I've lived in a 2-bedroom flat with Emily and Amy, a 1-bedroom flat with Emily and Oski the cat, been on several unaffordable holidays, eaten out in many ridiculously priced restaurants, and driven from Southampton to Drimpton more times than I thought was possible. But I wouldn't change it for the world, because I've done it all with Emily. I think it's fair to say that Emily is a quite extraordinary woman. She is kind, intelligent, funny, insightful, and just incredibly gorgeous. I feel extremely lucky to have even met her, let alone be getting married to her. I love Emily more than anything in the world, and I truly hope we stay together forever. Of course, Emily has her flaws, as I'm sure all brides do. Perhaps the strangest of these is her apparent fear of cutlery, or at least that's what I attribute to her inability to wash it up. Fortunately, we now have a dishwasher, which is carefully managed by me, so the cutlery goes in the correct place, dirty end up, and domestic bliss ensues. I, of course, am perfect. A fact which will no doubt be wholeheartedly reinforced by my best man. Emily has certainly changed me, but I'm sure that everyone here will agree it's for the better. Yeah. All right, Dad. I wouldn't say that Emily is my childhood sweetheart, because that isn't how things worked out. But marrying her is my dream come true, and I just hope I can make her as happy as she has made me. Had enough of me? Okay, let's raise the first and last of my toasts to the most beautiful bride in the world, and my wife, Emily Driscoll. My best friend, my oldest friend, a man I'd do anything for. Is this helping my chances? No, okay, I'll just have to take what's coming next. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you my best man, James Garrett.
Thank you, Harry. How do you follow that? Short straw. Right, thanks for that, Harry. I had actually prepared quite a lengthy speech detailing your qualities, because there are many, but you've eaten so much into my time that I'm going to have to keep this pretty brief. No, to be serious for a moment, I'm very honoured that you've asked me to be your best man today, especially with so many fine young men in the room, many of whom would be equally worthy of the privilege. But no, I sincerely mean that. It means a lot to me, so thank you. Before I drag Harry into the stocks and start throwing tomatoes at him, I'd like to take this opportunity just to acknowledge how stunning Emily and her bridesmaids look today. Absolutely fantastic. Round of applause, please. Harry has clearly tried to steal the limelight with the gold Converse, but has actually turned out looking a bit more Jimmy Savile rather than Justin Timberlake. So, Harry. Anyway. But I'm sure many of you agree that since Emily's come into Harry's life, he's become a more confident and positive person, and some of that pessimism has been squeezed out. Thanks, Bob. I was actually at a wedding last month where the best man had more dirt on the bride than the groom. So count yourself lucky today. But honestly, you're one of those caring people I know, and Harry's very lucky to have you. Now, when I started, let's get to the comedy. When I started writing this speech, I thought it would be interesting to see if there were any other Harry Driscolls out there. As you do. A quick Google brought up an 89-year-old retired American Airlines mechanic, a research analyst from an investment company, but best of all, a 12-year-old boy who camped out in his back garden for a whole year raising funds for his local gym. Unbelievable. Harry, you sure that wasn't you? Yeah. But of course, there can only be one real Harry Driscoll. Now, I've known Harry for a long time, over 20 years. Back from the... Oh, God. Oh, we're back. Okay. Some of those sweepstake people were quite excited. Here we go. Coin to get in. No, it's 3 more pages of this, don't we? Sorry, where was yeah, so I've known Harry for over 20 years, back from the glory days when he was an eye patch wearing, goat's milk swigging, French horn toting, awkward kid at Sawyer Primary School. Harry and family had just moved over from Guernsey to Dorset, and so began our Enid Blyton-style childhood of, exploring deserted houses, building dens, playing football until it was dark, all the while being nourished by lemonade, copious amounts of tea, and V's outstanding chocolate brownies. Round of applause for V, please. Thank you. We spent a lot of time together during those years, and when we weren't annoying our parents by taking over our living rooms for band practices, we were being cast in the school play as the Artful Dodger and Bill Sykes. Now, cheeky chappy Mr Driscoll played a blinding dodger, while my character was kind of busy falling off a roof. That's pretty much all that happened. But in 1996, we both left Sawyer School for Bedminster Comprehensive. Now, I wouldn't say that Harry went totally off the rails during secondary school, but spending your Friday nights trying to complete the 3-litre challenge, sat in a park in Bridport, became something of a ritual. For those of you who don't know about the 3-litre challenge, it involves drinking an extraordinary amount of cider, something classy, diamond white, white lightning, before seeing what trouble you could get yourself into. It wasn't uncommon for Harry to be jumping over fences, hiding in people's gardens to avoid the police. Fortunately, though, the down on your luck acts like a tramp act didn't last very long, as you got more into playing football and playing music. Now, as many of you know, Harry loves his music. I mean, he's the only person I know who still actually buys CDs. But anyway, Harry, your music taste is pretty broad, pretty varied, I think you'd agree. Well, actually, I think they're probably split between American punk bands that no one's ever heard of and some pretty questionable pop acts. How many times have you seen Pink? Come on. Twice, okay. I had money on 3, but I knew it was a lot anyway. Putting that to one side, some of my happiest memories come from playing in a band with Mr Driscoll. Now, our first proper gig was at Bedminster Youth Club, and it was something to behold. Harry had his drums set up with more cymbals than he could possibly ever need. My guitar was turned up loud and slung low below my waist. We played some classic covers from the likes of Ocean Colour Scene and EMF. True world beaters there. And the packed venue was full of screaming fans, and we didn't disappoint. I think you'd agree it was a night to remember. It was, okay. Actually, we were terrible. None of us could sing. We ran out of songs halfway through and had to start repeating some from earlier in the evening. On the upside, we did have a proper rider. Some Class A drugs and scantily clad girls with low esteem, I hear you say. Well, not exactly. We actually had a 4-pack of Lilt to share between us. After secondary school, Harry and I, along with Rich and Charlie, decided to take a year out. Now, having a pretty sheltered experience growing up in rural Dorset, we decided it was time to experience some different adventures and escape our parents' clutches. Now, I'm sure the others would agree that the trip that followed was fun, exciting, often exhausting, but nonetheless a really brilliant eye-opener. We interrailed around Europe for over a month, ticking off capital cities as if they were ingredients on a shopping list. Now, as you all know, Harry has the capacity for being a really boring sod sometimes. But on this occasion, his encyclopedic knowledge of European train times came in handy. Some pretty fond memories of that trip, including queuing up on a Turkish border at 3 AM for a visa. and successfully talking you out of buying a bow and arrow from the bazaar. Harry, what were you thinking? After that trip, we went our separate ways and headed off to university. Now, as many of you will know, Harry has an appalling record when it comes to dating girls. Looking at the table at the back there, Leeds boys. Now, Emily is clearly an anomaly in this situation. A couple of drinks, they were kissing on their second, as we now know, proper date in Bridport. But as Harry uni friends will testify, this isn't consistent with the form they witnessed during those early years in Leeds. After a few months of liking a girl, a shy Mr Driscoll finally gets the green light to leave with the object of his affections after a booze-filled night on the town, when he comes up with the immortal line, "I'm sorry, but I think that would be inappropriate." Harry, you're clearly a gentleman, before your years, and although that's going to give you a minor score when it comes to lad points, we salute you. Now, perhaps Harry's lack of success with the opposite sex can be traced to another source. Some of you know about Harry's penchant for women's clothing. Whether it was borrowing his sister's tops because men's sizes apparently didn't go small enough, true story, or squeezing into a boob tube on a cold New Year's Eve in Bridport. Harry's working life can basically be summarised as: worked in every department of Morrison's before applying to the Foreign Office. Now, Harry actually called on me as a character witness during the application process, and they asked me if there was anything that could compromise security. Now, I might have said something about the dressing up in women's clothing, mate. But anyway, for whatever reason, you didn't get the job, and you've been working in the hydroelectric sector ever since. Now, I did actually search for some hydroelectric jokes, but apparently there aren't any. Surprise, surprise. So, I've got some good old drummer jokes for you here, some classics. So, how can you tell a drummer's at the door? Anybody? The knocking speeds up. It's awful. You can feel free to groan there. My personal favourite: what does a drummer use for contraception? His personality. No, there we go. Now, in all seriousness, Harry, you're the best friend anyone could ask for. You're one of the most intelligent, loyal, and fun people to be around. You give a lot to those around you. And standing here today, I'm really proud to see the transformation from artful dodger to the fine young man that you've become. I was there the night Harry and Emily met 6 years ago, and you could tell that there was an instant connection there. Since then, we've seen them move to Southampton, buy a house, and start building a new life together. Now, I'd like to wish you guys all the happiness, success, and love on the next exciting leg of your adventure together. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to please stand, fill your glasses full, and raise them high. This will probably be the final toast. To the bride and groom. There will now be ice creams served outside, I believe.